I feel like Sonos has taken a bit of a hit recently with app changes, killing off the V1 stuff.
A bit?
I'm being kind, right?
That is the politest way to say that.
Don't sugarcoat it. Give it to me straight.
I'm very disappointed in you, Hawkeye. Not surprised, but disappointed.
Sonos focuses on commercial AV, the value of digital signage trade shows, and taking a hard look at your AV standards. All that and more next on AV Week. This is AV Week, episode 696, recorded Friday, December 20th, 2024. Evolving Standards. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of the biggest AV news and information we have gathered. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss that news and information, first and foremost, from parts unknown, Dawn Mead. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me, as usual.
Absolutely. I know a young man that I found back in the cornfields of London, Ontario. His name is Matt D. Scott, and I haven't seen this young man in a very long time. How are you, brother?
Cornfields? Really?
I don't know. I was trying
That's
to make a
harsh.
reference to I haven't seen you in a while.
We do have a lot of cornfields, though. Yes, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Why are you giving me crap?
It's an assumption. I don't appreciate it.
Oh, okay.
I've never worked in a cornfield once.
That does not shock me in any way, shape, or form.
Tim, it's that prideful North Montana man attitude. So
Matt D. Scott is of course, the longtime host of our Resi Week podcast, but he also he works in several areas in the London, Ontario area. Former CEDIA board member, all around good guy, and some of the best hair in the AV industry. So I used to say the second best hair, but that was before I cut mine. I'm going to stop talking now. Tom Arbuthnot. Tom is from Empowering Cloud. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Excited to be on.
Absolutely. Tom is not from St. Louis. He's from the UK, as you might be able to tell from his accent. We'll talk about his podcast here at the end of the show, but thank you all so much. First story comes to us from several different places. Actually, it could have been a couple different ways. But Sonos is pushing further into commercial AV. Sonos is set to unveil its quote-unquote largest ever stand at ISE in 2025 in Barcelona, featuring its first professional installation speaker, the Era 100 Pro, and the new Arc Ultra soundbar. The expanded booth, over 5 times larger than its 2024 footprint, will showcase 12 distinct areas dedicated to commercial, architectural, and home theater audio solutions. The highlight of the exhibition will be the Era 100 Pro. Has PoE, Power over Ethernet technology for streamlined professional installations. The Arc Ultra soundbar. That thing has 9.1.4 Dolby Atmos capabilities with new sound motion technology. Sonos' chief revenue officer, Dunja La Rosa, emphasized the company's growing commitment to the commercial audio market through this expanded presence at the February trade show. Mr. Scott, we're going to start with you simply because you're one of the best people I know that kind of goes between commercial and residential. Very simple question. What is Sonos doing in the commercial AV market?
They are doing what all companies do when they're public, looking for additional revenue streams.
Okay.
I am not knocking this move. I think this is actually a great move. We have seen over the many years that I've been around Sonos, been a dealer for Sonos, kind of worked loosely with them.
You were on their advisory board.
I was on advisory boards years ago. They have always made a push to commercial once they realized that dealers were putting their products into commercial environments. They have always had one of the best streamers really in the marketplace, commercial or residential. But what they've done is they kind of a couple years ago made an approach to actually get on board with commercial. They connected with 2 or 3 specifically commercial streaming platforms for music so that you can have licensed audio playback, etc. And they knew that tons of places were putting their speakers into bars, restaurants, doctors' offices, dentist offices. All of those SMB customers were doing it because it was way easier and honestly sounded significantly better than the 70 volt, $20, ceiling speaker that contractor put in when they built out the space. The Era is a really, really cool product, especially being PoE. I think that's going to push the conversation of PoE speakers significantly further than any other manufacturer has. But it's going to be very interesting to see who's going to jump on board with this, right? It's a great solution from the fact that you hang it off a switch and you're golden. But when you look at a large environment, it gets pricey fairly quickly. So they're doing what, any company's doing, is they're trying to expand their brand portfolio. This is nothing new, but this is their first quote unquote commercial specific product. So it'll be interesting to see how it's received.
I'll tell you, on the Sonos stuff, so I have Sonos at home. Is there a different expectation in like commercial, residential? It's not my world, about support timelines and software and those kind of things. I feel like Sonos has taken a bit of a hit recently with
a bit
changes, killing off the V1 stuff. I'm being kind, right?
That is the politest way to say that. You don't listen to my show, do you?
But I presume when you're going to proper commercial, you're wanting commitment that this is going to go into a restaurant. It has to last a certain amount of time.
I think the difference is that Sonos in commercial environments is typically a conversation that is driven by the owner of that establishment, whatever it is. They have Sonos at home like you do, and they go, I just want something easy. I'm just going to bring, an Era 100, a Play 5, whatever it is, and we're just going to throw it on the desk. It'll be great. So because it's a residential product that typically is being brought up or brought to the conversation by a homeowner who runs that business, right? I don't think that the expectation becomes, oh my gosh, this thing has to run, 24/7. That being said, most homeowners, the current app aside, and I'm not going to get into that because I've done it extensively in the last 6 months. It's still terrible. They still haven't figured it
Mitchell,
out.
put a link to Matt's show on these.
Yeah, there's a lot, an absolute ton. Heck, we talked about Patrick Bet-David calling them out last week. But the expectation is that it will work because, again, current app issues aside, it's been doing that for 10 years. Every homeowner that has it, other than the app issues, they love it. It just works, which is why they look at it and go, this would be great in my doctor's office. I could connect it to the couple that are in the ceiling, or I can literally put one on the counter. I don't think the service issue is going to be a concern. That being said, they've tried to address that. Again, not a spokesperson for Sonos, but they have tried to address that because they have a full commercial back end as well that's different from the residential, where you can control the streaming stuff. You can pay attention to what you're streaming. You can lock stuff out so that your employees can't access it. They're trying really hard to bring that typically great experience that Sonos has had in their years of experience to that light commercial market. But don't get it confused with a massive deployment design system. I don't think that's the market they're directly going after right now. They might have eyes on it in the future, but right now it really is kind of designed for that. Hey, we're going to put 20 of these in the ceiling and just be happy with it.
Dawn, I'm going to have you kind of rain on this parade a bit because Dawn
Gladly.
works in a highly secure environment. So
this is not
let's
going
chat
into that
about-
environment ever.
That's what I was going to have Dawn say, right? It is how much play does this have, in banking, in financial, in places where they're more concerned about the quality of your security rather than the quality of your audio.
So I think, as is the case with most of these really high-end residential products that then try to come into the commercial world, we will get that 1 or 2% of CEOs and high-level executives that come to us when we're designing their new boardrooms and their new buildings and say, hey, why don't we put this awesome thing I have at home in? And then we get to tell them, no, it's not secure. No, we can't have that. It's not made in the right place. It doesn't have the right vetting. It doesn't have the right certifications behind it. And basically, no. It's just not designed for that. Which is what I was going to say even before you set me up with this question, Tim, is, all the great resi and resi-mercial products in the world are only going to have a certain portion of the commercial industry. They're going to have sports bars. They're going to have doctors' offices. They might even have one or two small businesses in a boardroom, maybe. But for any of the big enterprises, especially anything in the secure world, like you said, casinos, finance, healthcare, my vertical that shall remain nameless or I'd have to kill you. All of those places, you're not going to ever see it. If you ever see it, it'll be maybe like one customer experience center off to the side somewhere that doesn't touch any of our other network or any of our other infrastructure and is just there to make something look pretty before whoever the big money people that are buying our products are, So for basically, this story means nothing to me. It might mean a lot to Matt and to Tom and to you, Tim, and to whomever else. But for me, it's like, good for them, whatever.
My favorite barbecue joint here locally, first time I walked in there, they had a little Sonos speaker and it filled the space. Mm-hmm. And that was like kind of a small light bulb, right? Because I don't have, giant light bulb moments anymore the older I get. But it was a small light bulb moment. Like, oh, this could actually work, right?
So two things. One, they're not going after that space. They're not going after, a Fortune 500 distributed system with sound masking. They might look at that on a roadmap like any other manufacturer would, but that's not where they're positioning this right now at all. Secondly, that is, not to rain on your parade, Dawn, but that is the same attitude that I heard 15, 20 years ago with the iPad. That's never coming into our space. Am I saying that this Sonos product will show up in some government building and be on an approved list? Gosh, no. But is this going to show up into an executive's office? 100%. Is this going to show up into your local bank that has 4 branches and they're going to hang it on the network because there's no IT company that actually is monitoring what's going on all the time? Yeah, it will, because some integrator is going to look at the easy sell of, Sonos. Like this is Sonos's brand story to a T. They took over multi-room audio and made it Sonos. Again, do I think that they're going to come after the commercial market and become synonymous with sound masking? Heck no. But to look at that market as an untapped possibility and not think that they're driving hard in this, like they put this out while their app was complete garbage. They spent money marketing this while their app was falling apart. They have big designs, Yeah.
Ask me 25 years later exactly how many iPads are in my environment where I work, and I'll tell you.
But there's a lot of other environments that would love to say the same thing and they can't,
right?
Because they're everywhere.
Next story comes to us from AV Buyers Club. Steph Beckett, she went all the way to Vegas for the Digital Signage Experience, DSC. It wrapped up its 2024 event at the Las Vegas Convention Center. They had keynotes from industry leaders like Taco Bell's Chief Digital Officer Dane Matthews, Experiential Director Craig Winslow, alongside showcases from 75 companies in the digital signage technology. The event, which featured the Dizzy Awards ceremony, education sessions, and hands-on installation tours to venues like Atomic Golf and Art Museum, has announced a significant format change for 2025. In 2025, they're going to relocate to the Hilton San Diego Bayfront. Matt, you and I know exactly where that is because it's right next to the San Diego Convention Center. We were there for CEDIA a couple of years. The event will be October 19th and 21st, or through 21st, 2025. They said it's going to be a more intimate setting focused on curating one-to-one meetings and personalized networking opportunities. Not quite sure what that means, but it sounds like less booths and more like, meeting spaces. I don't know. According to DSC Director of Events David Drain, the reimagined format aims to, quote-unquote, foster deeper industry connections while maintaining its role as a hub for digital signage innovation. Don, we'll start with you on this. Not necessarily from your current trajectory, although you can comment from an end user here point. but also from your years as being an integrator, what is the value of digital signage focused shows like DSC anymore?
Anymore or ever, unless you're just very.
I would say there was a moment in
Yeah,
time.
well, I mean, they did have a moment in time, but it's like it's always kind of been there on the periphery. Like people that are doing digital signage, most of them, not all of them. There are companies, including one of my former employers, that only does like digital signage and regular signage. They don't do any other AV, but most companies that are doing AV and digital signage also do all the other things. And so, from a value perspective, as an owner or part owner or even a manager, I would say, now, why am I sending you to this place to see 75 companies and have a couple meetings when I could send you to ISE or Infocom and see hundreds of companies that have, many more products, not just for our signage vertical or our signage products and customers, but for all of our customers. So, unless you're specifically one of those out of home guys, digital out of home, or if you're very specifically focused just on the signage, I don't know that it ever really had a huge, I mean, it has signage people, but I've never kind of got it personally. And I've never pushed to go to DSE, if that makes sense.
It does. That's why I'm asking the question. Tom, I want you to take a look from a different aspect. Tom covers a lot of the UC side. And last 2 months, both Microsoft and Amazon have made significant announcements in this area, in this space. What does that mean? Like this is, to Dawn's point, digital signage has been a fairly niche industry, right? Pretty relatively small, even compared to the rest of the AV industry. But now you have these two juggernauts, several of which you certainly on the Microsoft side, you cover extensively. What does those two companies getting into this space mean to the folks that are going to go to this show and are not as big as Microsoft?
Yeah, so I mean, the Microsoft thing is with Microsoft Teams rooms, there's over 1 million of those deployed at customers now, and there's been a lot of pressure from the enterprise customers to say, we've put these room systems in with massive screens, with multi-screen, we can't use that screen real estate the rest of the time. So there's been a pressure from customers to integrate digital signage, and at the same time, Microsoft have got a very, very basic native capability, just a simple web browser, unauthenticated type scenario. But really, it's AppSpace and Zogo have been integrated, and others are due to come as well. But it's coming more from we already use AppSpace and we want you to integrate it, or we already use XYZ and we want you to integrate it. So from Microsoft's point of view, it's more the customer wanting to use it than Microsoft wanting to get into the space, particularly, I think.
Matt, same kind of question. What does it mean to this space and to a show, like DSC? Dawn's right. 75 vendors versus, somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 at ISE at my last count. What does it mean to that part of the market when, two fairly significant juggernauts in the IT technology space gets into it?
I don't want to sound incredibly negative, but I think it's a massive decline. Like you're going from a show in Vegas to a show at a hotel. 75 vendors, more connections, less vendors, which means less people. I think it's just the decline of some of these smaller shows is they don't have the pull. And when these major companies like Microsoft come out and say, hey, we're going to do something adjacent, you don't, to Don's point, you don't need to go to this unless the only thing you do is digital out of home, right? If you're an AV company that does one other vertical, why would you not go to ISE or Infocom or heck, NAB has a ton of digital signage stuff. You don't need to go to some of these one-off shows. I took, just as a minor side note, my wife and I, we've started another company a couple of years ago that's in the millwork world. And I am trying to engross myself in that space a little bit in addition to the AV space that I'm already working in. I went to a show that I kid you not had 30 vendors and maybe 35 people at the show. We drove to Toronto for this garbage. It was billed as a big show in association with the National Kitchen and Bath, NKBA. Everything on their website, all the vendor lists, made it look like this massive show. It was essentially a tabletop that I wasted a day going to see. I've talked to people that go to DSE because I'm interested. It's co-located with LDI this year. I was interested in going. And everyone told me, do you do digital signs? I'm like, a little bit. Do not go to this show. And again, I'm not saying that for you as the listener. I'm saying that's what my friend told me, who goes to the show. When we see some of the bigger players from the tech world doing so many of their own events, sometimes it makes it hard for these smaller these smaller collaborative events to draw people. Because if all you do is sell teams, why would you not go to that?
And if I can jump on that a little bit, because I did work prior to joining the military industrial complex, I worked for a company that did just signage, both traditional signage and digital signage. And I think there's a lot of possibility for shows like this. But from my understanding of DSE and other ones, you go and you see, okay, Samsung has a signage board and Panasonic has a signage board, whoever, it's just like the same old players that we see at Infocom and ISE, but they're showing it in a signage context. Ooh, that's not why you would want to have a show like this. To my mind, you would want to have a show like this, just like going to Infocom and walking the edges and the little booths that I'm a big proponent of. You want to go to a show like this for digital signage and talk to the people like Quivity was a little company that does audience engagement. And they're the ones that can track where you're looking in real time on a digital sign to tailor your message better. You want to find companies that are niche wayfinding people or niche alert people that can tie in other aspects that are cool and neat and innovative to, hey, look, it's another LED board. Hey, look, it's a new display. Hey, look at our weatherproof enclosure. I mean, that kind of stuff. Yeah, get rid of that show. That's boring. Go to one of the big shows for those. But find those little like gems and those little innovative things and those really cool things that we aren't aware of, that we don't see at DSE, at ISE or at Infocom or even a tabletop show, and focus on those. And that would be exciting. I would want to, if I was still in signage, go to that show, not this show.
I think that's the issue that every show is dealing with, though, is what do they have to offer? Right. I went to an industry distributor show again a couple months ago, and it's a tabletop, and tabletops are what they are. It was hard to justify going. I went to show face to the distributor, and I think that is the issue that most of the shows are having. And like, I'm not going to pick on Infocom or ISE or anything like that, because they're the bigger shows. But anything that is not one of those massive events, you've got to find a way to show value, because people are not traveling the way they used to, because traveling's got more expensive. The show fees have got more expensive for the manufacturers. I think we're kind of getting to that point where it is a tough proposition to provide value and show the value to both the exhibitors and the attendees if you're not one of these juggernauts.
I think for me now, it's about meeting people. So I'm seeing some shows in Europe pivot much more to giving more time, more space to meet your peer type scenarios. And certainly the way I think about shows now, it's all about people. Like ISE wasn't even on my radar from the IT Pro Microsoft side a few years ago. And now it's a really key show for me, because all the team's OEMs are there, the Microsoft people are there, the community's there. And I'll be going to Infocom for the first time next year for the same reason. It seems to be like these are becoming hubs to meet people I want to meet. I'm not really going to see the kit. I'm going to see the people. Tabletops
are just a day off of work where you get a free lunch and you get a couple renewal credits for your certification.
Hopefully, yes. Last story is actually an article that I wrote about maintaining IT and AV protocols. And here's the kind of the gist of this. You've got your standards that you got in your campus or in your corporate entity. you need to take a look at those every once in a while. And the reason for that, a couple different things. Number one, technology changes, and you need to make sure that, whether it's your meeting room or your classroom, those are meeting the requirements, right? Because your organization requirements are going to change, and the technology is going to change. Add to that mergers and acquisitions and the uncertainty that the company that your standard is based upon is going to be around in the next refresh cycle. Tom, I want to start with you on this. How do you either create or how do you adjust your UC standards, your IT standards, your AV standards for your company?
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting. Again, from my point of view with teams, usually the customer's chosen a UC platform. So that's already defining a bunch of certified solution and vendors they should work with. But then within that portfolio, are the standards about an approach to types of rooms, or are they locking to a particular OEM or OEMs? And I've definitely seen customers do themselves harm by like, we're going to work particularly with this one or two OEMs, and then they kind of come off the boil on the innovation. And it's like, well, we've always been an XYZ shop, so we're going to stay being an XYZ shop. So, I mean, I guess my question back to all of you guys is how long is a standard a standard? How often are you allowed to flex it? That the inverse is obviously terrible as well, which is picking one of everything and then trying to deal with that. But I definitely see it needing to move faster than I think it used to because of changes in the OEM market and innovation, certainly in things like, maybe multicam or boards. Like, different people are doing different things.
Mr. Scott?
First of all, it warms my heart to hear someone properly pronounce the last letter of the alphabet.
Z? Yeah. Don and I do it all the time.
No, incorrect.
Okay, Canada.
Today we're the Commonwealth. I'm glad that we're back to the age-old joke of the best part of standards is that everyone has one. And whether you're in the midst of an acquisition, looking at new technology, trying to fit something new into your existing standards means that your standards have to be revised, because any new piece of tech is going to offer the ability to hopefully strengthen that standard. And I think that this is becoming a bigger and bigger aspect of what we in the AV world and the IT world are going to have to continue to spend time and capital on to determine the standards that as an integrator that I'm going to want to offer and recommend as a best practice to all of our clients, and then how we're going to deal with those clients, whether they supersede that standard or whether they want to not meet it, to kind of put that nicely, and how we're going to approach working with that client in the future based on their approach to our standards that we want to offer them. Because the thing that doesn't get talked about in this article, or most about this, is the liability for me as the integrator. And if I'm putting something on the network that is going to communicate with something, there are standards that internal company might have, and we can take this back to the Sonos conversation we started with. If that product that I'm selling because they want it doesn't meet their standard, but I, as an integrator, put it on their network because it's what they hired me to do, what is my liability? What if I had that client sign off on saying, hey, you asked for this, it doesn't meet your internal standards, we've told you that, you still wanted it, sign here, please.
Dawn, what do you do when the standard that you have no longer works?
Well, that assumes that we have a functional standard across the enterprise, which has been a work in progress.
Okay, I am assuming an awful lot there.
Really, part of the thing is finding a way when you're developing standards. And if you recall, I taught a class on this with Mike Peterson and a few others at Infocom a couple of years back. Part of it is finding a way to develop a standard that works not just for your end users within the company and your integrator and, mitigating some of their risk involved. I hear you, Matt. I feel you. But also, keeping up with the trends of both what products are out. Is it a different SKU? Does it have to go through all of the cybersecurity pen testing and everything else all over again? Granted, I'm in my own little psycho world over here, but that has a lot more involved. Is it something that mergers and acquisition, but even more than mergers and acquisition, is it something that it's the same old company, but they bought a new factory and changed where they're manufacturing things, which is going to impact whether or not it's allowed on property. There's a lot of moving pieces. And I will say the one good thing that, right after I started, they hired me to work on standards, God help me, for the enterprise where I work. And it's been an uphill battle constantly, but the working group that I've been working with is part IT people, a few end users, a few buyers. And one of the things that we've come up with is sort of a generic lookbook that says, okay, in our company, if you're doing a room or a huddle space of this size, this is vaguely what it will look like. Here are the basic pieces. A display no bigger than this for this size space. A at table hookup or a mini computer in the room. And it spells out what you're going to get, but it doesn't say specific details, this manufacturer, this model, this whatever. And we put together this glossy lookbook that we can hand to executives, that we can hand to program managers, project managers, and say, tell us, point to the pretty picture of what you want. And then we go to the latest list of approved, vetted, certified products that we can use that fit that generic pretty picture within our enterprise. And that way we can keep up with all of the technology needs, all of the security needs, all of the manufacturing needs, all of the JITIC, all of the, insert requirements here, and if it's one of our overseas locations, all of the RoHS and whatever the latest thing out of Europe is, sorry, Tom, but keeping up with all of that all at once, it can be a lot. So, come up with a generic standard. Find out, okay, these are the room types we have. These are the room sizes we have. When we have a room of this type and this size, it's going to look like this. And then in the back, you can say, okay, and as of this date, these are the approved models that you can pick from for that. And if you do a document sort of like that, then when Matt comes in as my integrator and says, you guys have standards and I'm required to do this if you want to have it on your network, we can just hand you the book and say, here's our latest list. Here's what we want specified for the room. If you know of a new innovation that will change the way the room flows, that we can take under advisement, let us know. In the meantime, because we love having our end user, our integrator partners help engineer with us. But we need to know about new things. I go to Infocom, how many of my colleagues don't, So, we'll give you the info so that we won't have to sign that document, saving your butt, Matt, when you do the work for us. And that's where we end up.
Still
Because
gonna have you
otherwise,
sign something.
well, that assumes we're going to hire a guy from Canada to do any of our work. No.
on that happy note, thank you all so much. Mr. Matt D. Scott, how do people connect with you or Omega Audio Video? You
can find us on Twitter at Matt D. Scott or X or whatever other social platform you want, or you can visit OmegaAudioVideo.com. Sorry, rarely give that one, or visit AVNation.tv. You'll find my AVWeek show as well.
All right. Dawn, how do people connect with you if they are so inclined?
You can find me on all of the social things at AVDawn or Dawn Mead, just like the fort, General George. You can find me at Infocom, presuming I'm allowed to go, because I'm usually teaching something. And if not, I'm running around with Tim and these guys getting into trouble. And you can't find me at work unless you already found me at work, in which case I'll see you at work. Otherwise, sorry.
All right. Tom, thank you so much, sir. Pleasure to have you on. How do people connect with you or Empowering Cloud?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's been really fun to have a bit of AV chat. So people can find me at empowering.cloud is the community site. So for anybody who isn't familiar with that's all around Microsoft Teams. So for this world, lots of room stuff, lots of OEM stuff, some phone stuff there as well. LinkedIn's my social of choice, Tom Arbuthnot, and Twitter and all the other good stuff. I'm a bit more findable at work than Dawn by the sounds of it.
All of us are more findable at work than Dawn is. Tom also, just like Matt, hosts a podcast. So how do people connect with that?
Yeah, so teamsinsider.show. So that's Teams focused again. And again, plenty of kind of overlap into your world. Recently had Tim on. That'll be out probably a few weeks after this show, I think. So look out for a bit of a deep dive on Tim's perspective on AV and IT coming together. It was a good chat.
Yeah, it was fun. I appreciate it. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me anywhere because I'll most likely complain about the Chicago Bears and American football.
As you should.
If you do happen to want to read something about that I have to say about something other than technology, you can connect me on LinkedIn if you'd like, but there is no pressure there. But go by the website if you would, please, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others, including Matt D. Scott's Resi Week, which is just like AVWeek, except I don't host it. So there's that going against it.
So it's better.
So
and commercial, whatever I want. That's great.
Whatever, yeah. Matt will talk about whatever he wants, really, quite frankly.
Yep.
And maybe the Yankees. We also have a brand new ed tech that launched this week, so you can check that out with our host Aaron Mayer Moran. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're tired of looking at me and my fantastic holiday themed jacket, you can just go listen to these fine folks and get AVWeek wherever you get your podcast. If you're listening to us and you want to see my incredible holiday jacket, you can go over and watch the video on YouTube. So either way, go the other direction and check us out. But yeah, go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.